Hi, everybody, and thanks for sticking with the conference all day. It's been such a great meeting, and I've really appreciated the opportunity to learn from many of you and see both old friends and meet new people. I'll try to make this quick. As Claudia mentioned, I run a grants program that the Southeast New England program, Watershed Implementation Grants, and I was asked to speak about the use of the program for watershed planning, but I will say that we fund a lot more than that, and so I hope, regardless of the kinds of projects that you work on the Cape, that you'll think of us when you're looking for funding. This program vision is part of our strategic plan, and the goal. Oops, I'm sorry. Wait. There we go. The goal for 2050 is a resilient ecosystem of safe and healthy waters, thriving watersheds and natural lands, and sustainable communities in the Southeast New England Program Coastal Watershed Region. I'll talk about that in a minute, exactly what that is. And so for the three program goals, I think of these as kind of the three pillars of our program. These can be kind of summarized as healthy ecosystem, clean water, and sustainable communities, which is pretty much, anything you can do in the environmental sector. And this shows our funding regions. So it's defined on a watershed basis, and it's basically all the watersheds that drain to south of Cape Cod. So it covers all of Rhode Island, but for purposes of this conference, it's really the south shore of Cape Cod. We don't split hairs over watershed boundaries where, for example, if somebody were to suggest a municipal-wide project that crossed that watershed boundary, that would be eligible because it would still be affecting the SNEP program region. But if there were a project, for example, in Provincetown, that would not be eligible for our funding. The program is a partnership between my organization, Restore America's Estuaries, which is a small nonprofit out of Washington, D.C., and EPA Region 1 out of Boston. Our funding level is typically about $3 million a year, split between the two states, Rhode Island and Massachusetts. And our grants are typically in the $100,000 to $400,000 range. Our maximum grant is $500,000, and we can award smaller grants for specific purposes that are outlined in our program request for proposals or program documents. Since 2018, we've awarded more than 70 grants in the region. And 1/3 non-federal funding match is required. That can be either cash or in kind. It's very flexible in terms of what the sources of that match can be. This outlines our funding themes for this year. You can read these yourself. I won't reread them except to say that, this kind of outlines some of our funding priorities. Again, it's very broad. As with some of the other programs that were described today, environmental justice is an important component of our program, and a significant proportion of our grants are either in EJ communities or fund projects that benefit EJ communities. But really, we're looking at all the issues that affect coastal communities in the region, and with I think water quality is central to that, but really everything from coastal resilience, habitat restoration. We've funded many of the kind of technologies that have been discussed today: permeable reactive barriers. Certainly, watershed planning. You may have heard a talk this morning about the Pleasant Bay Alliance, where we've funded a couple of grants to Pleasant Bay Alliance to do both planning and implementation of their watershed-wide permit and the activities related to that. One thing we don't fund is private septic systems typically, although we certainly could fund planning around, for example, if a community were looking at developing financing mechanisms, or in the case of Pleasant Bay, looking at the inputs of septic systems and their relative contribution to the watershed. That's that sort of thing. And I should have said our funding cycle is now underway for 2024. It's an annual competitive grants program. So our next request for proposals will be out in February of 2025. We do look for programs that are holistic in addressing those three areas that I mentioned of clean water, healthy ecosystems, and sustainable communities. So even if a project may be primarily a water quality project, we would like to know what are, for example, the habitat benefits of that water quality project, or if it's, say, a project maybe in a public park that has large community benefits, it may also have water quality benefits. So we're looking for how projects ideally address more than one of those focus areas. In terms of funding plans, we have funded a lot of plans of different kinds, and certainly watershed plans. But it's very important to us to fund plans that have a prospect of implementation. We understand that many times when you're developing a watershed plan, you may not know exactly how that's going to be implemented. Plans, in fact, the best plans often take on a life of their own and end up being implemented in ways that are not foreseen when they're developed. But we do get a certain number of proposals for plans where the applicants really haven't thought through how the plan might be transformed into reality, and ultimately, what we're really interested in is change in the real world, in the environment, and in communities. And even if that, in many cases, will happen well after the period of the actual grant that funds the plan. And we can fund really any stage of a project, from conceptual design to engineering and permitting to construction to post-construction monitoring, or any combination of those. Our grants are maximum 2 years, so that's one thing that can limit. I mean, as you know, many times environmental projects these days take much longer than that. So, in many cases, we might be funding just a portion of the life cycle of planning and implementation. And that's really all I have for now. Like I said, our next RFP will be out in February. SNEPgrants.org will take you to our webpage, and you can find out about projects we've funded in the past, as well as sign up for notification of our next RFP. And with that, thanks for your time.